The bullet tore through Katarina Reed's shoulder just as the first snowflakes began to fall. Her uncle's pistol still smoking in his trembling hand as he backed away from her crumpled form on the frozen ground. "You should have kept your mouth shut about what you saw," Uncle Jerome hissed, his face twisted with something between rage and panic. "You should have just pretended you never walked into that barn." Katarina pressed her hand against the burning wound, feeling hot blood seep between her fingers as the cold December air bit at her exposed skin. She had stumbled upon him that morning, loading stolen cattle into wagons with 3 other men she did not recognize. The brands had been freshly changed, still raw on the animal's flanks. When she had gasped, he had turned with wild eyes, and she knew in that instant that her own blood meant nothing compared to whatever money he stood to gain. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind that was picking up across the Colorado plains. "Uncle Jerome, I would not have said anything. I swear it." But he was already mounting his horse, his decision made. "Vultures will take care of you before anyone finds you out here. Your parents are dead, girl. No one will come looking." He spurred his horse and rode off toward Julesburg, leaving her bleeding in the scrub brush 5 miles from town. The snow fell harder now, thick flakes that stuck to her dark hair and eyelashes. Katarina tried to push herself up, but her left arm would not cooperate, hanging useless at her side. The pain was excruciating, a white-hot agony that made her vision blur and darken at the edges. She managed to sit up, pressing her back against a large boulder, trying to conserve what little warmth her body still held. Her coat was soaked with blood now, the fabric sticky and cold. She thought about her parents, dead these past 6 months from fever. She thought about how Uncle Jerome had seemed so kind when he offered to let her stay at his ranch, how he had smiled and told her she was family. Now she understood why he had been so eager to take her in. He needed someone to cook and clean while he ran his illegal operations. And when she became a liability, he had discarded her as easily as one might toss aside a broken tool. The cold was seeping into her bones now, making her drowsy. She knew that was dangerous. She had heard stories of people freezing to death, how they simply fell asleep and never woke. She forced her eyes to stay open, forced herself to remain alert despite the pain and the blood loss and the bitter cold that was turning her fingers numb. She did not know how long she sat there. Time seemed to stretch and compress in strange ways. The sky darkened as the storm intensified, and she began to accept that this was where she would die, alone and betrayed, not yet 20 years old. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats, muffled by the falling snow but growing closer. Wade Mitchell had been riding hard from Denver, trying to reach Julesburg before the worst of the winter storm hit. He was a cattle buyer by trade, traveling from ranch to negotiate deals and transport livestock to market. At 26, he had spent half his life in the saddle, learning to read the land and the weather with the skill of a man born to the frontier. When his horse whinnied and pulled to the left, he almost jerked the reins to correct the animal's course. But something made him pause. His bay gelding was a good horse, smart and steady. If the animal wanted to go left, there was probably a reason. "All right, boy," Wade murmured, giving the horse his head. "Show me what you found." They moved off the trail, pushing through brush that was already white with accumulated snow. That was when Wade saw her, a dark shape slumped against the boulder, barely visible in the growing darkness. He was off his horse in an instant, his heart pounding as he knelt beside the young woman. Her face was pale as death, her lips tinged blue, but when he pressed his fingers to her throat, he felt a pulse, weak and thready, but there. "Miss," he said urgently, gently touching her cheek. "Miss, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes the color of storm clouds. She looked at him without comprehension for a moment, then focused with visible effort. "Please," she whispered. "Help me." Wade saw the blood then, soaking through her coat on the left side. He carefully pulled the fabric aside and his jaw tightened when he saw the bullet wound in her shoulder. This was no accident. Someone had shot this woman and left her to die. "Who did this to you?" he asked, already shrugging out of his heavy sheepskin coat. "My uncle," she breathed. "Left me. I saw something I should not have." Wade wrapped his coat around her, his mind racing. The nearest town was Julesburg, at least 5 miles away, and the storm was getting worse by the minute. She had lost a lot of blood and was clearly suffering from exposure. He needed to get her to a doctor immediately, or she would not survive the night. "I am going to pick you up now," he told her, keeping his voice calm and steady. "It is going to hurt, but I need to get you on my horse. There is a doctor in Julesburg. Can you hold on?" She nodded weakly, and he saw the determination in her eyes despite the pain. He liked that. She was a fighter. Wade lifted her as carefully as he could, but she still cried out, the sound cutting through him like a knife. He held her against his chest, feeling how cold she was even through his layers of clothing. He needed to move fast. Getting her onto the horse while keeping her injury stable was one of the hardest things he had ever done. He mounted behind her, holding her securely against him with one arm while he took up the reins with the other. She was barely conscious now, her head lolling against his shoulder. "Stay with me," he urged, spurring his horse into motion. "What is your name, Katarina?" she mumbled. "Katarina Reed." "I am Wade Mitchell. Keep talking to me, Katarina. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from?" He kept asking her questions as they rode through the blizzard, forcing her to stay conscious, to keep fighting. She answered in fragments, her voice growing weaker. She told him about her parents, about the fever that had taken them, about her uncle who had seemed like salvation, but turned out to be something else entirely. The snow was falling so thick now that Wade could barely see 10 feet ahead. He was navigating by instinct and years of experience, trusting his horse to find the way. Katarina had stopped answering his questions, and he could feel how limp she had become in his arms. He pressed his hand against her wound, trying to slow the bleeding, and urged his horse to go faster. The 5 miles felt like 50. His arms ached from holding her, his face was numb from the cold wind, but he did not let up. This woman had been shot and abandoned, left to die alone in the snow. He would be damned if he let that happen. When the lights of Julesburg finally emerged from the white curtain of snow, Wade felt a surge of relief so intense it almost made him dizzy. He rode straight through the main street, ignoring the few people who peered out from doorways and windows, and pulled up in front of Dr. Samuel Harrison's office. Wade kicked at the door, still holding Katarina. "Dr. Harrison, I need help out here." The door flew open, and the doctor, a man in his 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes, took one look at the situation and moved into action. "Bring her in, quickly." Wade carried Katarina into the warm office and laid her on the examination table as gently as he could. In the lamplight, she looked even worse than he had feared. Her skin was waxy and pale, her breathing shallow. The doctor was already cutting away her blood-soaked clothing, revealing the ugly bullet wound in her shoulder. "Gunshot," Dr. Harrison said grimly. "How long ago?" "I do not know. I found her out on the plains maybe an hour ago. She said her uncle shot her and left her." The doctor's expression darkened, but he did not comment, focusing instead on his patient. "I need to get the bullet out and stop the bleeding. You should probably go." "No," Wade said firmly. "I am staying." Dr. Harrison glanced at him, seemed to recognize something in his expression, and nodded. "Then make yourself useful." Heat water on that stove and bring me towels from the cabinet." Wade worked alongside the doctor as he operated, following instructions, holding Katarina still when the doctor probed for the bullet. She was mercifully unconscious now, her body shutting down from the trauma. Wade found himself watching her face, this stranger he had pulled from the snow, and feeling something shift in his chest. She was beautiful, even pale and wounded as she was. High cheekbones, full lips, thick dark hair that fell past her shoulders. But it was not just her appearance. It was the strength he had seen in her eyes when she was conscious, the way she had fought to stay alive despite everything. "Got it," Dr. Harrison announced, dropping a deformed bullet into a metal dish. He worked quickly to clean and stitch the wound, his movements practiced and sure. "She is lucky. The bullet missed the bone and the major vessels. If it had hit the subclavian artery, she would have bled out before you found her. Will she survive? The next few hours will tell. She has lost a lot of blood and she is suffering from exposure. But she is young and she made it this far. That counts for something." The doctor finished bandaging the wound and covered Katarina with several heavy blankets. "Now tell me what happened. You said her uncle shot her." Wade relayed what Katarina had told him, about seeing something she should not have, about being left to die. Dr. Harrison's face grew harder with each word. "Jerome Reed," he said when Wade finished. "Has to be. He is the only Reed in these parts and he has a niece staying with him. I have had my suspicions about that man for months. Cattle going missing from neighboring ranches, brands being altered, but no proof, and the ranchers who have been hit are too afraid to speak up. Where is the sheriff? Visiting his sister in Greeley. Will not be back for 3 more days." The doctor looked at Katarina's still form. "We need to keep her safe. If Jerome realizes she survived, he will come to finish the job." Wade felt a cold anger settle in his gut. "Then we will make sure he does not get the chance. Can I stay with her tonight? Watch over her?" Dr. Harrison studied him for a long moment. "You do not even know this girl. Does not matter. No one deserves what happened to her." The doctor nodded slowly. "There is a cot in the back room. I will stay too, just in case her condition changes, but you look half frozen yourself. Get some coffee into you and dry off those clothes." The long night stretched ahead. Wade changed into some spare clothes the doctor provided and sat in a chair beside Katarina's bed, watching the rise and fall of her chest, listening to her labored breathing. Outside, the storm continued to rage, wind howling around the corners of the building. Dr. Harrison checked on her regularly, monitoring her pulse and temperature. Around midnight, her fever spiked, and for several terrifying hours, Wade and the doctor worked to bring it down, bathing her face and arms with cool water, changing her sweat-soaked blankets. "Come on, Katarina," Wade murmured, holding her hand. "You have fought this hard. Do not give up now." As dawn broke, her fever finally broke with it. Her breathing eased, becoming deeper and more regular. The color began to return to her cheeks. Dr. Harrison examined her and allowed himself a small smile. "She is going to make it. The girl is tougher than she looks." Wade felt the tension drain from his shoulders. He had not realized how worried he had been until relief flooded through him. He looked down at Katarina's hand, still clasped in his, and carefully released it. "You should get some rest," Dr. Harrison said. "There is a hotel down the street. Clean bed, hot meal. I will send someone to fetch you if anything changes." But Wade shook his head. "I will stay a while longer, just to be sure." He dozed in the chair, jerking awake every time Katarina stirred or made a sound. When her eyes finally opened around mid-morning, the first thing she saw was his face. "You," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You are real. I thought maybe I dreamed you." Wade leaned forward, unable to keep from smiling. "I am real. How do you feel?" "Like I was shot and left to freeze to death." She tried to smile but winced instead. "But alive. Because of you, you are safe now. You are at Dr. Harrison's office in Julesburg. He got the bullet out. You are going to be fine." Tears welled in her eyes. "My uncle. He does not know you are here. And when the sheriff gets back, we will make sure he answers for what he did." She closed her eyes, a single tear trailing down her cheek. "Thank you. I do not even know how to begin to thank you. You saved my life." "Rest now," Wade said gently. "We can talk more later." Over the next 3 days, Wade barely left Katarina's side. He brought her broth when she could eat, read to her from the newspapers when she was awake, sat quietly when she needed to sleep. They talked, slowly at first, then with growing ease. She told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her parents and their small farm, about the dreams she had once had of becoming a teacher. "That was before," she said quietly, "before the fever took them. Before I had nothing and had to rely on the charity of a man who turned out to be a monster." "You will have dreams again," Wade told her. "Different ones maybe, but just as important." He told her about his own life, growing up on a ranch in Wyoming, learning the cattle trade from his father before the older man died in a riding accident. He talked about the freedom of the open range, the satisfaction of honest work, the beauty of the land despite its harshness. "Do you ever get lonely?" Katarina asked. Riding from place to place, never settling down, Wade considered the question. "Sometimes, but I always figured when I met the right person I would know, I would want to change my life for her." Their eyes met and held, and something unspoken passed between them. Wade felt his heart beat faster. He had known this woman for only 3 days, but he could not imagine leaving her. The thought of riding away from Julesburg, of never seeing her again, was physically painful. On the 4th day, Sheriff Tom Whitmore returned from Greeley. Wade and Dr. Harrison met with him, laying out everything that had happened. The sheriff, a weathered man in his late 40s, listened with a deepening scowl. "I have been watching Jerome Reed for months," he said when they finished, "but I could never get anything solid on him. This changes things. Attempted murder is not something I can overlook. You need to move fast," Dr. Harrison warned. "If he finds out his niece is alive, he might run." Sheriff Whitmore nodded. "I will take some men and bring him in today." "Can the girl testify to what happened?" "She can," Wade said firmly. "And she will." The sheriff and his deputies rode out within the hour. Wade stayed with Katarina, and when she asked where everyone had gone, he told her the truth. "They are arresting my uncle." Her voice was small, uncertain. "He tried to kill you, Katarina. He needs to face justice for that." "I know. I just never thought I would be the one to put family behind bars." Wade took her hand. "He stopped being family the moment he pulled that trigger. You do not owe him anything." By evening, word came back that Jerome Reed was in custody. He had been caught with the stolen cattle and had confessed to everything when confronted with Katarina's survival. He would be transferred to Denver for trial, facing charges of cattle theft and attempted murder. "It is over," Katarina whispered when Wade told her. "It is really over." But it was not over, not for Wade. As Katarina grew stronger over the following week, able to sit up and then walk around the doctor's office with his arm supporting her, Wade knew he was facing a choice. His business was waiting. He had contracts to fulfill, cattle to move, appointments to keep. His life was on the trail. But every time he looked at Katarina, every time she smiled at him or laughed at something he said, he felt his resolve to leave weakening. She had started to fill a space inside him he had not known was empty. "What will you do?" he asked her one afternoon as they sat together in the doctor's office, winter sunlight streaming through the window. "When you are fully healed," Katarina looked down at her hands. "I do not know. I have no family now, no home. I suppose I will need to find work somewhere. Maybe I can still teach if any school will have me. What if you did not have to figure it out alone? She looked up at him, hope and uncertainty warring in her gray eyes. What do you mean? Wade took a deep breath. He had faced down charging bulls and dangerous men, had survived blizzards and droughts and everything the frontier could throw at him. But asking this question terrified him more than any of that. I know we have only known each other a short time. I know this might seem sudden, maybe even crazy. But Katarina, these past 2 weeks with you, they have been the best of my life. When I think about leaving, about going back to my old routine without you, it feels wrong. It feels empty. Wade, she breathed, and he could hear the emotion in her voice. I have some money saved. Enough to buy land, start a ranch of my own. I have been thinking about it for years, but I never had a reason to settle down. Now I do. He took both her hands in his. I am asking you to give me a chance. Give us a chance. Let me court you properly the way you deserve. And if you feel the same way I do, if you think you could build a life with me, then marry me. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy and keeping you safe. Tears were streaming down Katarina's face now, but she was smiling, a radiant smile that made Wade's heart soar. You would do that for me, change your whole life. Not for you, he said softly. With you there is a difference. She laughed through her tears. Yes, yes, I will marry you, Wade Mitchell. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you wrapped your coat around me and promised to save me. And I have been falling deeper every day since. Wade pulled her gently into his arms, mindful of her still healing shoulder, and kissed her. It was a soft kiss, tender and full of promise, the first of many they would share in the years to come. They were married 3 months later, in the spring of 1878, in a small church in Julesburg with Dr. Harrison and his wife as witnesses. Katarina wore a dress of cream lace that the doctor's wife had helped her sew, her dark hair woven with wildflowers. Wade wore his best suit, his hair freshly trimmed, his eyes never leaving his bride's face. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Wade kissed Katarina like she was the most precious thing in the world, because to him, she was. They used Wade's savings to purchase 200 acres of good grazing land just outside of Julesburg, with a creek running through it, and a small cabin that they would expand as their family grew. Wade had already started building up a herd, carefully selecting breeding stock, while Katarina planned a vegetable garden and dreamed of the home they would create together. The first year of their marriage was not easy. Building a ranch from nothing required backbreaking work from dawn until dusk. Wade worked the land and the cattle while Katarina managed the household, cooked their meals, and helped with the lighter ranch work when her shoulder allowed. There were times when they were so tired they could barely speak over dinner, times when unexpected expenses threatened their carefully saved funds, times when the harshness of frontier life seemed overwhelming. But through it all, they had each other. At night, they would lie in bed in their small cabin, wrapped in each other's arms, and talk about their dreams. Wade would tell Katarina about the ranch he envisioned, with hundreds of head of cattle and horses, with ranch hands to help with the work, with a house big enough for the family they both wanted. Katarina would share her ideas for the garden, for the curtains she wanted to sew, for the school she still hoped might one day be built near enough for local children to attend. I could teach there, she said wistfully, if we had a school. Then we will make sure there is one, Wade promised. Once the ranch is established, once we have a bit of security, we will talk to the other families in the area. There must be enough children by now to warrant it. Their first winter together tested them. The cold was brutal, the snow deep, and they lost several head of cattle to the harsh conditions. Wade blamed himself, staying up late reviewing his decisions, wondering what he could have done differently. But Katarina held him and reminded him that they were new to this, still learning, and that some losses were inevitable. "We still have each other," she said. "We still have the core of our herd. We will rebuild." And they did. Spring brought new calves, healthy and strong, and Wade was able to sell several head at good prices. The money allowed them to add onto the cabin, creating a second room and a proper kitchen. Katarina planted her garden, coaxing vegetables from the Colorado soil with patience and determination. By their second anniversary, the ranch was turning a modest profit. They hired their first ranch hand, a young man named Peter who was hardworking and reliable. With the extra help, Wade was able to expand their herd even further. It was that summer when Katarina discovered she was expecting their first child. She had suspected for a few weeks, recognizing the signs from the married women she had known growing up, but she wanted to be certain before telling Wade. When Dr. Harrison confirmed her pregnancy, she rode back to the ranch with her heart pounding with excitement and a touch of fear. She found Wade mending fence in the east pasture. When she called his name, he looked up with that smile that still made her heart skip, even after 2 years of marriage. "What brings you out here?" he asked, setting down his tools. "Everything all right. Everything is perfect." She took his hands and placed them on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby. You are going to be a father." For a moment, Wade just stared at her, processing the news. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen, and he let out a whoop of joy that probably carried all the way back to the cabin. He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down, worried he might hurt her. "Are you sure? How are you feeling? Do you need to sit down?" Katarina laughed at his sudden nervousness. "I am fine. Dr. Harrison says I am healthy and the baby should come in late winter." "February, probably." Wade pulled her close, cradling her against his chest. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. Katarina, you have made me the happiest man alive." The months of her pregnancy passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Wade became almost comically overprotective, insisting that Katarina not lift anything heavy or work too hard. He took over most of her chores in addition to his own, and hired a woman from town to help with the household tasks as Katarina's belly grew. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Katarina protested, but she secretly loved his attentiveness. "I almost lost you once," Wade said seriously. "I will not risk you again." Their son was born on a freezing night in late February 1880, during one of the worst blizzards Colorado had seen in years. Dr. Harrison made it to the ranch just in time, battling through waist-deep snow to reach them. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Wade, listening to Katarina's cries from the other room, thought he might go mad with worry. But when he finally heard the thin wail of a newborn and was called into the bedroom, when he saw Katarina exhausted but smiling with their son cradled in her arms, every moment of fear evaporated into pure joy. "Meet William," Katarina said softly, looking up at Wade with tired but glowing eyes. "William Red Mitchell." Wade touched his son's tiny hand with one finger, marveling at the perfect miniature fingers that immediately curled around his own. "He is beautiful. You are amazing. I love you so much." He kissed her forehead, then his son's, overwhelmed with gratitude for this family he had found, for the life they had built together. William was a healthy, happy baby who grew quickly under his parents' devoted care. Wade proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle despite his rough cowboy exterior. He would carry William around the ranch, pointing out the cattle and horses, talking to him about everything they saw even though the baby was far too young to understand. "You are going to raise him to be a rancher," Katarina teased, watching them from the porch. "I am going to raise him to be a good man," Wade corrected. "Whatever he wants to do with his life after that is up to him." As William learned to walk and then to talk, the ranch continued to grow. Wade's reputation as an honest dealer and skilled cattleman spread, and he began to receive offers to supply cattle to larger markets. The modest cabin was replaced with a proper house, 2 stories with a porch that wrapped around 3 sides, with enough bedrooms for the large family they both hoped to have. The school that Katarina had dreamed of became a reality when she and several other women from neighboring ranches petitioned the territory for funding. A small schoolhouse was built halfway between Julesburg and the Mitchell Ranch, and Katarina became one of its first teachers, working 3 days a week while Wade's mother, who had moved from Wyoming to be closer to her son and grandson, watched William. "Look at everything we have built," Wade said one evening, standing on their porch with his arm around Katarina's waist, watching William play in the yard. "5 years ago, I was just a drifter with no roots, no purpose beyond the next job. You gave me all this." "We gave each other this," Katarina corrected. "I would not be here without you. I would not be alive without you. Do you ever think about that night, when I found you in the snow, sometimes, but not with fear or sadness anymore? I think about how lucky I was that out of all that empty land you rode by, that your horse heard something or sensed something and led you to me. It feels like fate." "Destiny," Wade agreed. "You were meant to survive. We were meant to find each other." Their second child, a daughter they named Catherine Rose after both their mothers, was born in 1882. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's determined chin, and from the moment she arrived, she ruled the household with an iron will wrapped in dimples and charm. William, now a sturdy 2-year-old, was initially suspicious of this new creature who had invaded his domain, but he quickly became fiercely protective of his baby sister. Wade would often find him sitting beside her cradle, telling her rambling stories about the ranch and the animals, his small hand resting protectively on the edge of the cradle. "He is going to be a good big brother," Katarina said, watching them. "He learned from the best," Wade replied, pulling her close. "You are an amazing mother, Katarina. Our children are so lucky to have you." The years flowed by like the creek that ran through their property, steady and sure. A third child joined the family, another son they named Jacob, born in 1885. The ranch prospered, growing to over 1,000 acres with several hundred head of cattle. Wade hired more hands, built additional barns and outbuildings, and established the Mitchell Ranch as one of the most successful operations in northeastern Colorado. But success never changed who they were at their core. Wade still rose before dawn to work alongside his ranch hands, still took time to teach his children to ride and rope and respect the land. Katarina still taught at the school, still tended her garden, still made their house a warm and loving home. They faced challenges, of course. Droughts that tested their water resources, harsh winters that took their toll on the herd, the occasional dispute with neighboring ranchers over boundaries or water rights. But they faced everything together, their love and partnership growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Wade took Katarina back to the boulder where he had found her that winter night. They had not been back since, both of them content to leave that painful memory in the past. But Wade wanted to show her something. As they approached, Katarina saw that he had placed a marker there, a simple wooden sign with carved letters. She dismounted and walked closer, reading the words through sudden tears. "Here life began, February 1878. It is where we started, Wade explained, coming to stand beside her. Not where you almost died, but where we both found a reason to truly live. I wanted to mark it, to remember. Katarina turned into his arms, holding him tight. I love you, Wade Mitchell. Every day I love you more than I thought possible. And I love you, Katarina Mitchell. You are my whole world. They stood there together as the sun set over the Colorado plains, the same plains that had nearly claimed Katarina's life, but instead had given them both a future beyond anything they could have imagined. The years continued to pass. William grew into a tall, serious young man who loved the ranch and showed every sign of following in his father's footsteps. Catherine, spirited and bright, announced at age 12 that she intended to go to college and become a doctor, inspired by the stories her mother told of Dr. Harrison saving her life. Jacob, the baby, had his mother's love of books and his father's quiet strength. Wade and Katarina watched their children grow with pride and wonder, grateful every day for the family they had created. The Mitchell Ranch became known throughout Colorado, not just for its quality cattle, but for the integrity and kindness of its owners. Wade and Katarina were active in their community, supporting new families settling in the area, contributing to the church and school, always ready to help a neighbor in need. When Colorado achieved statehood in 1876, just before Wade had found Katarina, no one could have predicted how much would change in the following decades. The wild frontier was gradually becoming settled, towns growing into cities, the railroad connecting even remote areas to the wider world. But some things remained constant. The land still required respect and hard work. Family still mattered most. And love, real love, still had the power to transform lives. On a warm spring evening in 1898, 20 years after their wedding, Wade and Katarina sat on their porch watching the sunset. Their children were grown now. William ran the ranch alongside his father, recently married to a lovely woman from Denver. Catherine was in medical school in Chicago, writing letters full of her studies and dreams. Jacob was teaching literature at a university in Boulder, having inherited his mother's love of learning. We should be feeling old, Wade said, reaching over to take Katarina's hand. 3 grown children about to become grandparents if William and Sarah have their way. But you do not feel old, Katarina asked, smiling. Not when I am with you. You still make my heart race like it did that first day in Dr. Harrison's office when you opened your eyes and looked at me. Flatterer, she teased, but her eyes were soft with love. Though I feel the same, sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that all of this is real. Do you ever regret it? Marrying a wandering cowboy you barely knew? Never, not once. She squeezed his hand. You were my salvation, Wade, in every possible way. You saved my life that night, yes, but you also gave my life meaning. You gave me a home, a family, a love I never dreamed possible. How could I ever regret that? They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the familiar landscape turn gold and purple in the fading light. This land that had almost been Katarina's grave had instead become the foundation for a life rich with love and purpose. Do you remember what you said to me that night? Katarina asked suddenly. When you found me, Wade thought back. I said a lot of things. I was trying to keep you conscious. You asked my name. And when I told you, you said, keep talking to me, Katarina, like my name mattered, like I mattered. You did matter. You do matter. You are everything. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling his arm come around her just as it had 1,000 times before. I want you to know something. That moment when you found me, when you said my name like I was someone worth saving even though you did not know anything about me, that was when I first felt hope. Even through the pain and the cold and the fear, I felt hope because you saw me as a person, not just a problem or a burden." "You could never be a burden," Wade said fiercely. "Finding you that night was the best thing that ever happened to me." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, talking about their children and grandchildren to come, about improvements they wanted to make to the ranch, about the trip they were planning to Chicago to visit Catherine. They talked about everything and nothing, the way couples do after 20 years of marriage, when companionship is as important as passion, when knowing someone deeply is its own kind of love language. Later, as they prepared for bed, Katarina paused at the bedroom window, looking out at the moonlit ranch. Wade came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her hair. "About how life can change in an instant. One moment you are bleeding in the snow, certain you are going to die alone and forgotten. The next, a stranger appears out of a blizzard and carries you to safety, and then, impossibly, that stranger becomes your whole world." "Not a stranger," Wade corrected gently. "Never a stranger. The moment I saw you, something clicked into place, like I had been looking for you my whole life without knowing it." She turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. His beard was grayer now, his face more lined, but his eyes held the same warmth and strength that had captured her heart 20 years ago. "I love you, Wade Mitchell. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Katarina Mitchell. You are my heart, my home, my everything." They had started in blood and snow and desperate hope. They had built a life on faith and hard work and unwavering love. And as they held each other in the home they had created, surrounded by the fruits of their labor and their love, they knew that some stories, the best stories, do not end with a rescue. They begin with one. The years that followed were gentle ones. Wade and Katarina watched William and Sarah welcome 3 children, giving them the joy of grandparenthood. Catherine graduated from medical school and returned to Colorado to open a practice in Denver, becoming one of the first female doctors in the state. Jacob published a book of poetry that gained acclaim in literary circles and married a fellow teacher. The Mitchell Ranch continued to thrive under the joint leadership of Wade and William, father and son working in harmony to adapt to the changing times while maintaining the values that had always guided them. Katarina continued teaching part-time, beloved by generations of students who would remember her patience and kindness for the rest of their lives. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1918, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was filled with laughter and love, multiple generations of Mitchells coming together to honor the couple who had started it all. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, Wade and Katarina slipped out to the porch, their favorite place to be alone together. The spring air was warm and sweet, carrying the scent of the wildflowers Katarina had spent decades cultivating around the property. 40 years, Katarina marveled. It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all. "Best 40 years of my life," Wade said. "Though I hope we have many more ahead of us. We have been so blessed," she said softly. 3 wonderful children, 7 beautiful grandchildren, a life full of love and purpose, more than I ever dreamed possible when I was young. "More than either of us dreamed," Wade agreed. "And we built it together, from nothing. From the moment I picked you up out of that snow, we have been building this life brick by brick, day by day." "You know what I think about most?" Katarina asked. "Not the hard times, though there were plenty. Not the successes, though we should be proud of those. I think about the small moments. The morning coffees shared in companionable silence. The way you always kissed me goodbye, even if you were just riding out to check the herd. The conversations we had late at night, solving the problems of the world, or just sharing our thoughts. Those are the moments that made a life. Wade pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. Those are the moments I treasure too. The everyday magic of living with someone you love completely. They stood there together, two people who had found each other in the harshest of circumstances and built something beautiful from that terrible beginning. The ranch spread out before them in the moonlight, a testament to their hard work and dedication. But more importantly, they had built a family rooted in love, respect, and kindness. They had raised children who were good people, who contributed to their communities, who knew how to love deeply and work hard. "If I could go back," Katarina said suddenly, "to that girl lying in the snow, certain she was going to die, I would tell her that everything is going to be all right. Better than all right. I would tell her that the man who finds her will become the love of her life, that she will know happiness beyond measure, that the worst night of her life is actually the beginning of the best life she could imagine. And I would go back to that young cowboy trying to outrun a blizzard," Wade replied, "and tell him to trust his horse's instincts, because they are about to lead him to his destiny. I would tell him that the woman he pulls from the snow will become his whole world, and that every moment of the hard work ahead will be worth it." They stayed on the porch until late, as they had done countless times over their 40 years together, talking and simply being with each other. When they finally went inside, they passed photographs on the walls chronicling their life together. Their wedding day, young and hopeful. William as a baby, then Catherine, then Jacob. The ranch growing year by year. Grandchildren arriving. A life documented in images but lived in moments of joy and love. In bed, Katarina curled against Wade's side, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was a sound that had comforted her for 4 decades, a rhythm that felt like home. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Wade asked, his arms tightening around her. "For riding by that day, for hearing me, for not giving up during that long ride to town, for staying with me during the surgery, for choosing to change your life so we could build one together. For 40 years of love and partnership and joy, for everything." Wade kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for fighting to survive, for trusting me when you had every reason not to trust anyone, for building this life with me, for giving me children and making this ranch a home, for being my partner in everything, for loving me the way you do. Thank you for 40 years of being the best part of my life." They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other's arms, the way they had fallen asleep thousands of nights before and would, God willing, fall asleep thousands of nights yet to come. Two people who had found each other in the darkness and created light together. Two people who had taken pain and loss and turned it into love and family. Two people who proved that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are simply preludes to the best chapters of our story. Their love story had started with betrayal and bullets, with blood-staining snow and a desperate ride through a blizzard. But it had become so much more. It had become a ranch and a family, laughter and hard work, tears and triumphs. It had become 40 years of shared mornings and whispered goodnights, of children raised and grandchildren adored, of challenges faced and overcome together. It had become exactly what love is supposed to be: a partnership, a friendship, a passion, and a promise kept every single day. And on that 40th anniversary night, as they slept peacefully in each other's arms, the ranch quiet around them and their family sleeping under the same roof, Katarina Reed Mitchell and Wade Mitchell were living proof that some people are worth riding through blizzards for, and that true love, once found, can weather any storm and build something that lasts forever.